Welcome to the Seriously Social podcast with your host, Simone Douglas. This episode features an interview with educator Kylie Henningsen.
This episode of Seriously Social podcast. I'm joined with a very good friend of mine who I've known for nearly 8 years, well actually over 8 years now, Kylie Henningsen from MITS. So Kylie, maybe you can just give us the Cliff Notes version about your journey to the Red Chairs.
So my journey to the Red Chairs came about when you put the lovely post up on LinkedIn that you were looking at talking to people from interesting backgrounds, predominantly related to marketing and social media, etc. I've spent 3 decades working in adult and vocational education. A lot of what I've had to do in my positions has actually been marketing and advertising, and of course the huge rise of social media that now impacts our industry. So I threw my hat in the ring and said, I'm happy to come along and have a chat to you about marketing, adult and vocational education, and where we see ourselves coming out of the post-COVID-19 scenario and how that's really going to impact our sector and, of course, impact how we market.
Absolutely, and I think, there are so many interesting points with that, because having worked with you in the vet sector and in a small RTO, like just the amount of stress and pressure naturally falling on trainers and managers and things, and compliance really gets in the way of, I think, them enjoying the process of educating their students, which is what attracts people to training in the first place, I think.
Absolutely, and you've touched on a really good point, is that there tends to be a trend in the vocational education sector where owners and boards of management have this unrealistic expectation that an RTO manager has the inbuilt skills to be able to market and advertise, which not necessarily do they actually have those. So consequently, they're writing copy and writing narratives that are probably a bit less than ideal. And I think what it really shows the value of hiring an organisation such as yourself, where you have that inbuilt expertise to be able to come in and look at the business as a whole, identify exactly where the marketing and or advertising needs to be focused on, and to develop some really good copy. I was one of the probably first people, I think, who purchased your book.
You were, yeah.
And I've got it with me today, and there's lots of tags in it. But one of the most important points I wanted to draw from that is we've gone away from this humanistic narrative. A lot of adult and vocational education providers, if you look at them and put all of their marketing together, a lot of them are doing exactly the same thing. They're bombarding the potential student with lots of questions. They're making the assumption that the student is going to be able to answer all of those questions in a logical order and then make a connection with wanting to enrol with your registered training organisation. It's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, and I know I'm really always attracted to the stories that sit behind a business, and I think there is a huge opportunity for training providers in particular to do a better job of telling their story through their people, I think.
Absolutely, and I think that's one area where I'm very much against using stock photos in websites, especially when you've already got this awesome base of students that you can utilise. You've got your training facilities, you've got all your back of house staff, you've got your wonderful reception area, your training rooms, all of those different environments that you can draw on. And especially if you're looking at international students, their parents are the ones who are predominantly making that decision. So they're connecting with the sites that they're going on, where they're actually seeing what is happening and the environment that their son or daughter may be actually going into. So the more that you draw on that and utilize that to, the best effectiveness that you can, the better it is for your potential student market, but also it's a way of advertising and marketing that substantiates and sort of sets yourself in the environment. Adelaide very much is on who you know.
Yeah, totally is.
Absolutely. So it's who you know, who have you worked for, and what does the industry say about you.
Yeah, in registered training, absolutely. And I think in all industries, like that story is the same, but the RTO industry is like very tight. Like, you know, even still having been out of it now for 8 years, but it was, you know, always fascinating to me. You know, if I was interviewing someone or I was, you know, looking at a trainer or something, and I'd get a phone call like the week of all of that happening from the RTO manager at another RTO going, I hear so-and-so has applied with you, you know, just letting you know, you might want to not do that, or, you know, their compliance levels were not fantastic, or their student outcomes, or the opposite, going, I hear, you know, so-and-so's applied to train with you, just so you know, they have been absolutely fantastic for me. They're a contract trainer, they do X, Y, and Z. So I think that in RTO land, they're exceptional networkers internally. I don't know that they're so good at networking externally, a lot of people, but they're very good in those internal networks. How have you grown? Because you are good at networking externally. So how have you gone about growing your external networks, you know, into industry sectors and things like that?
I am probably lucky that I have always been the type of person that could, as my parents would say, you could sell ice to the Eskimos.
Yeah.
So I've always had that sort of gregarious, outgoing nature. I think capitalising on using those skills at attending a lot of the PD events that happen in South Australia, and going up and saying hi to people, introducing yourself, where do you come from, find out where they are, what they're doing, and you create those connections. Because as you said, the RTO world is very tight.
Yeah.
So you'll end up seeing those people at every single trainer provider forum, at every single ASCA briefing, at every single professional development session that they schedule at EDC. Yeah. And you'll see them time and time and time again. Yeah. So establishing those connections and then building on those relationships. Yeah. It is not so easy for some people to sell themselves. And I understand that. I think to assist people with doing that is breaking down what your skills are to their basic form, and highlighting what your strengths are. What are you really good at? Not everybody is really good at the public speaking, but then you might be absolutely excellent at designing training material. Yeah. You may be an excellent trainer and assessor, but you don't manage compliance too well. Working out where your strengths and weaknesses lie, so do a SWOT analysis on yourself. Yeah, they're always still handy, and they're still beneficial, and the opportunities will identify for you where you can build your strengths. Yeah. And there's so many different professional development opportunities that are available to everybody that doesn't cost you the earth. A lot of them are free, and there is no such thing as you know everything. You keep learning in this sector like you do with the rest of life, especially when you're dealing with a federal regulator that keeps moving the goalposts quite regularly. And as of the 1st of July, they've moved the goalposts slightly again. Of course they have. Of course.
So if you were going to... let's test my RTO language, it's been a while. So if you were delivering a Certificate 3 in networking, so this is like an entry-level qual, what would be the 5 main performance criteria that you might attach to that type of qualification? So I'm hoping there isn't a training package attached to networking, so we're just playing hypothetical here.
Yeah, no, not yet. There isn't. Definitely not yet. Of course, the first thing is going to be effective communication. Yeah. Secondly will be relationship building, teamwork, a lot of the soft transferable skills, so conflict resolution, negotiation, relationship building, like I said, effective communication, knowledge and understanding of your industry. You need to be able to walk the walk and talk the talk, especially if you're wanting to branch out as a solo. You need to, your clients are paying you and relying on you to give them absolute competent advice. Being able to, I suppose, actually do presentations. If you're networking, presentation skills, work on your public speaking, even some of the really simple things about knowing how to present yourself, knowing when, where, why, who, and what before you walk into the situation. So being prepared doing your groundwork and your research beforehand. So I think a lot of those performance criteria would be really important when they develop that training package, because it's only a matter of time.
It surely is, or at least, so it's kind of funny because a lot of the things that you've just mentioned is stuff in my new book that will be released in about another 5 months. So it's about, emotional intelligence, having the capacity to read a room, understanding when you're taking up too much oxygen, so reading the body language that tells you that you should shut up now. But also, the best networkers are the glue in a conversation in a group of people. So I personally think that a great acid test of competence is watch the person in the room when they're in a group of 5 or more people of different personality subsets, because if they can maintain that conversation in a way that everybody gets to speak and everybody gets heard, then that's the sign of a master networker, I think. So.
Absolutely. And the person who can draw out information from the person who's the most timid. By getting them to feel that they are participating, that they're an integral member of that little subgroup. But it's interesting, as you said, about knowing when the oxygen starts to run out. I liken it to copy on a paper where you need to have that adequate white space. Otherwise, your brain can't take in all of that information in that written text if there's not sufficient white space. And I think that very much is a similarity to what you were saying. Micro skilling and micro credentialing is starting to really gain traction in the industry. I think post COVID-19 it's really going to start expanding, where we are going into a recession that is just inevitable. It's a given. For current statistics is that there is 1 job for every 12 people at the moment, as of my research last night. Even though the government is the federal government spends about $6 billion a year on vocational education and training, and the funding for funded places is around $4 billion a year. It is quite substantial. What I think the economy is going to need is to have people who have those micro skills, to have those micro credentials. The micro credentials are really important because they actually identify all those transferable cross-sector skills. Communication, leadership, those types of characteristics. The micro skilling is learning exactly what you need to know for the particular job. It's extremely cost effective. It's easy to deliver. It's in bite-sized chunks of information, which for adults, that's how we learn the best, is by getting some theory and then being able to put it into practice. And there is an outcome at the end of the day for the person as well as for the employer. So I think there is very much going to be more of a focus on those micro skills and micro credentials rather than the university degree. Recent studies actually show that there is an expiry date of skills, and at this stage international researchers put a figure of 6 years. So every 6 years your skills are likely to become obsolete. So if you spend 4 years at university, you're only getting 2 years as you bang for your buck. On average, we will have 5 career changes in our life, and they will include 17 different jobs.
Wow. Yeah, no, I'd be about there.
I'm probably not far away either. And I think one of the some of the elements that make yourself and others successful is those transferable cross-industry skills. And those are skills that come with the individual. What is learnt is a specific nature. So for example, I recently had an association with an RTO that delivered automotive. I'm not a mechanic. No background in it whatsoever, but I didn't need to be because we had expert trainers and assessors who were delivering the training and the assessment. I learnt a lot from them, but the confines of the RTO, the compliance needs, the staffing needs, all of those were exactly the same. So all of my skill sets that were transferable were able to go into that particular position. I find talking about touching back on the marketing as well too, is that I really am sort of extremely disappointed by a lot of the marketing that is done within our sector.
Yeah.
As I said, I think RTO senior executives and senior managers are great at what they do, but you really need to have a marketing and advertising expert. It's an investment.
Yeah, it is.
Whether you bring somebody in or whether you outsource, it is an investment in the potential market. And if you're not investing in the front end, you can't expect to get a lot on the back end.
Well, and they often don't have, it's been my experience, and we've worked with a couple of RTOs in our time, that when you go into that organisation, so I bring my marketing brain, which is really code for being able to speak human to human, because that's where we're different from a lot of other marketing agencies, but they often haven't spent time working out what that story is. So what is the emotional context of my experience with your organisation? How am I going to feel? What is it that you want me to feel? What is the journey that you're going to take me on, and how do you sum all of that up? And I think it's huge opportunity. There are going to be some RTOs out there, like there are a lot of other businesses that in this current environment, so when we're in a recession and everyone's fighting for the dollar, which is what ostensibly people are telling us, there are two things that are going to be important. The relationships that you have with the people around you, and how well you have stewarded your networks up to this point. So, I liken it to how many favours do you have in the bank, and have you been making withdrawals every week?
Yeah.
I try not to make withdrawals unless I absolutely need to.
Yeah.
But also, that thing about, do I know what my story is? And as an organisation, does every member of my team understand which part of the story they're responsible for? So which sentence they're writing, or which chapter, or whatever it might look like. And I think, that's a really powerful position if you can get yourself as a business in. If you can tick those two boxes, so if the CEO or whoever it is, the management team, have robust networks and have stewarded them really well, and if everyone understands the story that you're telling, then you're an unstoppable force. Recessions don't really matter then.
Absolutely. And as you said, it's really important that everybody understands what their place is.
Yeah.
In Adelaide, it is very much proven that students recommend training providers. I have worked for a number of organisations where, based on the success of what we've delivered, students have recommended potential students, so that we have actually had full bookings for 2 years down the track with almost no marketing or advertising, because it is that personal recommendation and experience that is the most important element of marketing. And social media really appeals now to, the under 30s.
Absolutely.
They spend, I'm sure you can probably clarify how much time they spend on social media, the likes, the comments, etc., etc. So your social media presence, as you can well attest, can make or break you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Google reviews can, have a lasting impact on your potential market. And South Australia, in the RTO world, we don't have an infinite market, especially now with the fact that our international borders are still closed. A lot of training providers are now looking at the fact that they have no intakes, very little local intake, and no overseas intake for pretty well the rest of this year. And even their onshore students who are now looking at, do I pay my course fees? Do I pay rent and put food on my table? Exactly. It's now even more important for the education providers to make sure that their social media presence is very ethical, and as you said, humanistic. You need to touch that human element, because at the moment, I think students need that more than ever at this particular stage.
That's a really good point to end on, in terms of, I think all businesses, in order to be successful, have to care more about their end user or customer, or my clients are my family, really. So you need to care about them that much.
Yeah.
Because right now that's what's going to count, and moving down the track, it will absolutely have an ongoing impact. Kylie, thank you very much for joining me on the red chairs.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Very lovely on the red chairs.
Cheers. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Seriously Social podcast. See our website for more details at www.socialmediaaok.com.au/podcast. Check the show notes for credits, music used in the program, and more details about our guests.